Delaware, everybody's a target.
No, that ain't it. Because in my hood, most brothers don't make it to the age of 18.
Happy birthday, homie.
For me?
Yeah. Happy birthday, homeboy.
For me?
Yeah. Make a wish.
Man, I hate to see my people like this. Even though we free, we still slaves in the mind. Because either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about being a menace while waiting for admissions to Dr. Umar's Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Leadership Academy.
All right, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody could hear me. Apparently, I was on mute, so I'm just giving a shout out to the chat right now before we start. The Wada for letting me know that you couldn't hear me. Shout out to your car, Just Art and Paint, Maka War in the building, and also we got Kanai Howard in the building. Shalom, y'all. I appreciate y'all tuning into the class. So again, for those just tuning in, this is the law class. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is judging a matter. So the law, as far as judging a matter, it's Salakia, sir. Somebody unplugged it. The law about judging a matter is all through Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and even Christ brings it up, in the New Testament. But one of the things I want to do is, if I could, let me get Leviticus 19 and 15, because earlier I had brought up, during the intro to the class, that right now we have judges that are unrighteous. And if you're supposed to be, upholding the laws of the land, how can you do that if you're unrighteous? How can you judge a matter properly if you're a deviant? How can you judge a matter properly if you're taking bribes? If you have an issue with a person that you're judging over and you just don't even like the way they look, or something as simple as, your emotional state or your physical state isn't even right at the time of you judging. Those things, actually, cause people to get harsher sentences. So we're going to go into all that tonight. If I could, let me get Leviticus 19 and 15, Baba Kashar.
Khan. This is Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 15. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment.
So ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. This is in the Old Testament, Leviticus, and this is a law, because the Lord is always making provisions for us to have to do the right thing. Ye shall make no unrighteousness in judgment. So that means you can't judge somebody unrighteously. You can't give somebody a harsher sentence according to the Lord. You can't, show favor, or disfavor towards somebody when it comes to judgment. Continue.
Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor.
So you can't have a dishonor for the poor just because they're a person of the poor, because a lot of times what people want to do is they want to give respect unto the rich. They want to give somebody, respect that's high, highly esteemed. And when it comes to a poor person, that judgment comes down harder, way harder than it's supposed to be. And in a lot of instances, Blacks, Hispanic, and Native Americans, we represent the poor. Continue.
Nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor.
So when we're judging, and specifically in Leviticus, this is talking about the Israelites judging the matters of other Israelites, because when it talks about the neighbor, that's actually talking about the children of thy people.
Right.
And that can also be found in the scriptures. But that's another thing showing you how far that we've fallen from the Most High, because we shouldn't even have any heathens judging matters over us because they're going to be unfair to us. They're going to treat us in a manner that is just not conducive to how a human being should be treated. So when you're in captivity or you're under another nation, you're not going to get any type of just treatment. And these laws were being laid out so that we will be able to judge each other righteously. But then you actually have judges that may be Black, may be Hispanic or Native Americans, and they may be judging on behalf of heathens. When you're in captivity, sometimes you'll notice that these people that are judging over us, that are our own, they might judge us in a way that they want to show the heathen that they're one of them. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Come on.
I'm gonna give y'all, or Salaki, if I could, or it might be a situation to where it might be a woman judge, and she might treat a brother dishonorable because she has a certain type of hatred for men. And I'm gonna give y'all a personal story I know about a brother who went through something, and the judge, was dealing unrighteously with the brother. So there was some type of, domestic disturbance, and the brother was not in the wrong. The brother was dealing with a female who, had an issue about whatever was going on. And she begins to, pull a weapon out on him. She pulled a firearm at him and was pointing it at him. So he had to pull out his camera. He ended up having to call the authorities. When the authorities showed up, the female lied, said that he hit her. He, pulled a weapon out, this, that, and the fourth, and it went to court. The entire time the brother is speaking and trying to explain this to the judge is having a conversation with some other woman in the court. So he stopped talking. He would stop talking. And she would look up and say, why'd you stop? He said, oh, I see you were having a conversation. I wanted you to hear everything. She said, no, I'm listening. Go ahead. He started talking again. And this proceeded probably about 3 or 4 times until he just, stopped talking. And she said, why did you stop talking? He said, well, it doesn't seem like you're listening to me. If I could just show you the video. Until he actually had video proof, this judge was about to, judge in a manner. And the time leading up to what she did was just unrighteousness the whole time. And we have these type of people that are put in a system that literally grinds us into powder. We're not even whole by the time we come out of these systems. If I could, let me get Proverbs verse 20 and 8. Because what we should realize is if the scriptures say that we should judge in righteousness our neighbor, that woman is technically a neighbor of that brother. Right. And she was not judging him righteously. She wasn't even listening to what he was saying in order to even have an understanding of the complete subject of what was happening. She saw a Black man in the courtroom. She saw a Black woman in the courtroom, and she decided to give him, a raw deal. Instead of actually listening and find out what was going on, to where the brother had to stop talking and just present a video. He just let the video speak for what was happening. And the judge could clearly see that the woman was the one that had the firearm. But if you could read that for me.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 20 and verse 8. A king that sitteth in the throne of judgment scattereth away all evil with his eyes.
So when the judge or a king is seeing what's going on, he can literally scatter away the evil just by being there because they know he's going to judge it righteously. That king is supposed to be the type. And when we even talk about elected officials, when we talk about judges, people in power that can actually make a difference in matters of judgment, we don't have what's being described in Proverbs 20 and 8. Mm-hmm. When we think of the kings of the earth now, we're thinking of people like Joe Biden. We're thinking of people like Donald Trump. But how have they judged matters? How have people that are set over top of them judging matters? Because you're not supposed to, according to Leviticus 19 and 15, you're not supposed to have preference for the poor, but then also you can't have preference for the rich. So what happened? How many felonies did Donald Trump have? He had like 30 or something.
34, 33, something like that. It was up there.
Right. There's brothers that's going to jail without any felonies. Mm-hmm. They didn't even commit a crime. They're being arrested off humbug, something ridiculous.
Stop and frisk.
Stop and frisk. They're being arrested. What was it?
And guilty until proven innocent.
Damn right. But the United States will tell you the other way. They'll say innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But what happened to Khalif Browder? He was accused of stealing in New York. He was put in jail. He was subject to unhuman living conditions. He was bruised, battered, and beaten until he ended up unaliving himself from the trauma that he faced. But Proverbs 20:8 says, a king that sitteth in the throne of judgment scattereth away all evil with his eyes, just with his eyes. That evil is going to stop when he comes up. So do you know if something goes before that king, it's getting put out if it's evil. So that's not what we face in this country. So you believe that a man like Donald Trump or Joe Biden can sit, on the throne of judgment and be in a, a righteous way, but that's just not what it is. Donald Trump has 34 felonies. Joe Biden's son has a crack addiction and was, doing illegal things with firearms and also putting the country at risk with a laptop. But Joe Biden made sure that his son was pardoned and didn't have to face any judgment. There was favoritism shown. If I could get Proverbs 29:14, because what we have to realize is the laws, the statutes, and commandments of what is going to give us our wisdom. So if you ask, how should you judge a matter? You should know that you should go to the scriptures. You can go to men above you in the ISUPK and seek counsel on how things should be judged, because there are things that should happen. Here's another quick personal story. And this is just, me speaking from what I believe would happen in a situation. And I'll ask you brothers an opinion on what you think should happen as well, because in a sense, we should all be judges and we should all be able to carry out a judgment that is just and righteous. Right. If a student is cheating, let's say homework is passed out, somebody doesn't have the answer, the student gives an answer to another person and they don't actually do the work. What if a brother wants to answer, what would you do in that instance where student A had to work, student B cheated by getting the answers from the other person? What would the judgments be? Well, if a brother wants to answer, if not, I'll go ahead and answer, because there could be more than one, just fair answer.
What's the judgment for cheating?
Yeah. So what would you do? Let's say you're the person who decides the fate of those two people. Person A did their homework, but they gave the answers to person B. So they both did something wrong, but it's a little bit different as far as, what occurred with both of them. Somebody gave the answers, somebody took the answers.
So if I follow you, I got the test, I passed it, and I give an answer to the next person.
Right. But you wouldn't be the person, you would be the judge. You would decide what would happen to them for doing that.
I mean, they will both fail. I mean, yeah, I'll probably just fail both of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they're both untrustworthy
employees
or whatever they're trying to do. They're both disloyal.
Got you.
You know what I mean? And not really, I don't think they're both really trying hard.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because birds of a feather flock together.
Right. Damn right. Anybody else got any answers they want to present? Because I agree with Kaash. They would probably both fail. Or I like to get creative with punishment sometimes. There might be an instance where the person fails and the person that had the right answers and gave them the right answers, I'm going to make them tutor. That's going to be their punishment. They get in detention. And since you want to be giving away the answers, instead of teaching people, you're going to have a mandatory tutoring, for a certain amount of time. But that's something that me and Kaash said that we would judge. And I wouldn't care who the student was. It wouldn't matter. But there's certain instances where you have whoever it is, their child, or Salakia, the person might be, a child of somebody rich. And then they decide that, it gets swept under the rug. There's not a judgment for something that happened. And do you know what that creates? That creates a monster. That when that person doesn't receive the judgment they should, they go through life, getting off and doing stuff. And that person becomes an absolute monster. The reason why Joe Biden's son is the way he is most likely because he never received the proper judgment. Well, anybody know Joe Biden's son's name? Hunter. Hunter has probably never received in his life a proper judgment. And when you do that, when you don't receive what you deserve as far as punishment, you're going to continue down the path. That's why he had to be parted. The Lord didn't play that with the children of Israel. Our judgment was 400 years of slavery. So that's why I'm changing. That's why I changed, because the judgment that came down was incredibly, incredibly hard. But because we did what we did, we deserved it. We deserved it. No, I'm not saying that, you know, the oppressor should have done what they did, because the oppressor went overboard on us. We needed to be in servitude to understand what the Lord said to us, but we didn't need to suffer what we suffered at the hands of the heathen the way we did. That's why the Lord is going to give them double. But we need to remember that when we're judging a matter. Don't do it in a manner to where the person that is supposed to receive a punishment doesn't receive what they get, so they don't change, because you're going to end up with a Hunter Biden dropping crack in the White House. That's what's going to happen. All right. If I could, let me get Deuteronomy 22 and verse 22, because a lot of brothers and sisters that aren't really too keen on what the Bible is talking about would believe that the scriptures pretty much say it's okay to SA somebody, when it's actually the opposite. And you'll see what should be the case, and how the Lord feels about it in Deuteronomy 22 and verse 22, if I could.
Khan, Deuteronomy 22 and 22. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die. Both the man that lay with the woman and the woman, so shalt thou put away evil from Israel.
All right, so right there. So this is about adultery. And let's read that one more time from the top, because this is a judgment. The judgment in this situation is death. And the reason why the judgment is death is because it's so serious. The Lord doesn't want this happening all over and over and over again throughout the country. Right. At the time that Israel was ruling. Let's hear that one more time. And then it's going to go into, SA and the other things. But I wanted you guys to hear the judgment, for other matters in the verses ahead of it.
Khan. If a man be found lying with a woman married to a husband, then they shall both of them die.
I agree. And I'm not saying anybody should be, unalive nowadays, but these are the laws that are going to, happen when Christ has the kingdom. But I completely agree with what the Lord is saying and everything he says. This one I'm highlighting because if you're a man and somebody sleeps with your woman, that's something that you don't even want to go through. That's something you don't want to go through. And here, that woman getting cut off, you don't even need to deal with her no more. But back in the day, the man and the woman would be, put to death. All right, let's drop down to verse 23. Oh, Salakia, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to add,
Kind of what kind?
that's what happened with how the Christians see the birth of Yahushua.
Oh man,
That's how they see it.
You know what?
She was espoused to a man by the name of Joseph.
Right.
And according to them, Yahushua came and knocked her up and told him,
Right.
Yo, I need you
Right.
to take care of this little shorty for me.
So pretty much with so what they would be saying is Joseph saved her from the judgment that was coming.
Oh, that's what they say. I never heard that.
Because that's
what they're gonna have to say.
Right.
Yeah, they're gonna have to say.
Because in the scriptures it says Joseph was a just man.
Yes, man.
But they don't understand that if he was just in the way that they're thinking, right, that if she had done what they believe, or she had been, thought to be, pregnant by somebody else, or if the people thought that, he pretty much would be hiding her from a judgment that should be coming down. Right. All right, let me see. Let's go to verse 23.
Verse 23. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then you shall bring them both out of the gate of that city, and you shall stone them with stones, that they die. The damsel, because she cried not, being in the city, and the man, because he had humbled his neighbor's wife, so thou shalt put away evil from among you.
So are we seeing a pattern here with what the judgments are? We see in a pattern because it's saying what I said earlier. The reason why the punishment is so harsh and the judgment is so harsh is because these type of things can't continue in Israel, because it would turn the land into just pure chaos. When you have a situation, this particular one where it's saying if the woman doesn't cry out, it could be because the person is actually party to what's happening, and they're trying to after the fact say, oh, well, this person SA'd me. How many times have you guys seen where a brother gets with one of these heathens, and then the daughters of these heathens try to say, oh, the black man did this to me, right? The black man did this, when in reality it was a consensual situation that's said afterwards to be something else. Right. But in this instance, the Lord has a judgment for that and wisdom on it. Let's read that again from the top. And Salaki, I'm gonna go ahead and read. I think we got, let me see. Oh, Most High Christ, Commander General Yohana, Shalom Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Brakatah, sir. Good to have you in the class.
Khan, this is Deuteronomy 22 and 25. But if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and a man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die.
So that judgment right there, does that sound like that's condoning SA?
It's like it. Did you want me to go to 24?
Let me see. No, we could stay at 25, because the last verse I wanted to touch on, this is 26, and then I wanted to continue, through, because we got quite a few verses to get through. But let's read that again from the top one more time.
Deuteronomy 22 and 25. But if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and a man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die.
So it gave an example of two people where the situation is not really SA, it's after the fact. The woman is saying, this is what happened, but it didn't happen. And then verse 25 sums it up. So again, we're talking about judgments. And the scriptures have every single thing laid out on how a judgment should be, how to judge a matter. And this is saying that the man only. Let's read verse 26.
But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her.
So does anybody know what verse 26 is actually saying in layman's terms?
Means that if she doesn't resist her attacker, then she is worthy of it. But if she does resist, then she is innocent.
Okay, let's read verse 26 one more time.
But unto the damsel that shalt do nothing, there is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter.
It's that part that I'm talking about.
The last part,
right? You kind of get what that's saying.
Come.
Okay, Most High in Christ. So for everybody, that's watching, what that's saying is a woman being essayed in such a matter where a man raises up and does something like that is almost like he unalived her. That's what that's saying. So for those of you who are confused about, the scriptures warranting, graping or SAing, that's not right. What the scriptures are actually saying is the opposite, that it's wrong. And if a man does that, he should actually be unalived himself, because it's pretty much the equivalent of what he did to a woman.
Right.
All right. So let me get, if I could, Baba Kashah, let me get 1 Kings 3:16. And we'll start from there, because this is a story about King Solomon, how wise he was as far as judging matters. And, we should only, hope to have the wisdom that the Most High has for us to judge matters, because as we continue to see around the world, we don't have a lot of wisdom as far as judging matters. Like, there's a large disparity between Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans and their white counterparts when it becomes, when it comes to matters being judged. And I'm gonna go through those statistics, soon. A lot of the brothers that are, put in jail and that are exonerated, it's because things were not judged properly in the courtroom. This is not really a system of law that's geared towards finding out who's right. There's a lot of favoritism, nepotism within the court system. When judgments are handed down, we literally get the worst of it, the brunt of it. So if I could, we can do 1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 16.
So I can show them, bring it real quick.
No sweat, no sweat.
There it is. 1 Kings chapter 3 and 16. Then came there 2 women that were harlots.
So these women, are harlots. And the king is still about to judge a matter. He's not just going to dismiss them like, you hookers, get out of here. Like, that's not what he did. Continue.
Unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house.
So you have one woman who's explaining. She gave birth in the house that she lives in with a whole nother woman. Continue.
And it came to pass the 3rd day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also.
So 3 days later, the woman that she lives with gave birth. So now they both have children 3 days apart. The babies are going to look similar. A lot of babies don't have too many identifying characteristics, from the offset. It's kind of hard 3 days old. Like, a mother's going to know who her child is,
Right.
But they're going to be very similar, especially only being 3 days apart. Continue.
And we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house.
So she goes even more in elaboration. It's only us 2 in the house. Whatever is about to transpire came from one of the women within that house. Verse 19.
And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it.
So the woman's child passed away.
Right.
Because it sounds like she kind of smothered the baby. Continue.
And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom.
That's a sadistic person right there. I can't imagine actually being around a person that has that type of cruelty, to where their child was unalived by their irresponsibility, and then they do a switcheroo with the child. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sociopath right there. Continue.
And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear.
So this matter, again, is being presented in front of King Solomon. So this is a tough matter. There's no cameras. There's no, there's no proof. The babies are only 3 days apart. The babies look alike. There's no DNA test. I'm not sure, outside of what's about to happen, how you would be able to know whose the child was.
Right.
That's why this type of matter took a lot of wisdom. This is an amazing story. Continue.
Then said the king, Slakia, verse 22, and the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king.
So this is kind of a situation to where, emotions can flare up. And being in a seat of judgment can often take somebody to be clear-headed. But most of all, you really need the Spirit of the Lord to judge, matters small or great. This is a great matter. This is a situation where one woman lost her child and pretty much kidnapped somebody else's child and put in place. So she's pretty much taken the woman's child away. And the king has a decision to make. And this is a judgment that has to be carried out. Continue.
Verse 23. Then said the king, the one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king.
Who would have actually thought to do that? No, like this is the type of wisdom that had to be given from the Lord to think to say something like this to test, because what he's doing is he's about to test these women to see what's what. Because like I said, there's no cameras, there's no DNA test, there's no record, there's no little armband to put around the baby's arm. This is ancient times. You can't tell the children apart or whose children they are. Continue.
Khan. And they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other.
So the King Solomon said, take a sword and cut the baby in half and split it like it was a chicken dinner.
Right.
Continue.
Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son, and she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it.
Her bowels yearning means she wanted that baby to live. She loved that child. She was already attached to that child within the space of 3-4 days. But let's continue to hear it.
But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided.
So the other one was like, carelessly was like, just cut the baby in half. Neither one of us need to have it because her child is already dead. Right. Read.
Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof.
So that's how the king was able to judge that matter, by hearing the response of the mothers after he said, cut the child in half. Because he knew there was no mother that would want to see harm to that child. The mother was like, look, as long as I don't even have to have the child in my presence, as long as the child gets to live. But the other one was like, yeah, cut it in half. We both going home with nothing. Continue.
And all Israel heard the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment.
Most High in Christ. So that's an example right there of judging a matter. We talked about and hold on, let me see. You know what? I want to bring up a quick article. The one I sent to you, Kaash. Let me go ahead and get that article real quick. I'm just gonna read. Let me see. I want to read a little bit of that article before we move on to the other parts, because you have one instance that we just read about in the scriptures where a matter was judged properly. Then you have other judgments that aren't done properly to the point of legality taking place. Who remembers Meek Mill? His case when he was dealing with that judge. All right. So Meek Mill was dealing with a judge, and she was doing some outlandish stuff. She was making his judgments harder. She was pretty much doing what I spoke about, as far as like when you have one of our own that are being ran by the heathens, and they pretty much want to, run amok and do stuff to, their own, and especially black men. All right, so let me go ahead and read a little bit of this article. This is from this is a PBS article from y.org, and this is Judge Brinkley. All right, It says, in the American judicial system, judges tend to enjoy a high level of independence and low level of scrutiny. So what that's saying is there's a high level of operating autonomously, meaning that judge in a lot of cases is allowed to do whatever they want unchecked.
Right.
And nobody's going to scrutinize. Nobody's going to sift through and say, well, why did you decide to give this person this and not this person this? But last month, the supervising judges of the first judicial district in Philadelphia made a highly unusual move. So they're letting you know that normally this doesn't happen, what they're about to speak of. They stripped sitting judge Janice Brinkley of all her criminal cases and reassigned her to civil court. So she was messing up so bad that they had to take away her criminal cases and just move her over to civil because there's less of an impact to the people she's presiding over if she's going to be, on those cases running amok. Really, she should have been, the robe should have been snatched right off the woman.
Right.
All right. Since her reassignment, judges and lawyers have reviewed dozens of her cases and revealed that Judge Brinkley imposed illegal sentences, allowed sentences to run past their maximum date, and failed to schedule critical hearings. You know what kind of monster you got to be to take away somebody's freedom and then let whatever sentence they had continue to go past the maximum sentence, and let alone not even schedule a hearing so they can actually defend themselves? In this case, this judge was so bad, she was literally, stripped of the criminal cases and put over to civil court. All right. Ordered by higher courts. Cruel misconduct like this is more than malpractice. It literally robs individuals of precious time, liberty, and freedom. All right. Let me see. Do I want to read it? And this is Meek Mill's judge who was presiding over his case. I just wanted to give an example of how this justice system really is not for us, because people can sit in a seat unchecked and there's really no consequence to what they're doing. All right. Let me see. Let me get, if I could, let me get. If you could hold Revelations 13 and 10 for me, and then we'll move on after that. But I just wanted to read something. All right. You guys remember the case with Botham Jean, right?
Comic-Con.
I went back and read that article since we were covering judgments today. And it says a Dallas judge says her decision to hug and share Christian teachings with a convicted murderer in her courtroom was appropriate because she did so after sentencing had occurred in the case. You guys remember this case? Okay. In a lot of instances, Black people are not only sentenced by the judge, but they're even, accosted, which means like the judge talks down on them, says what they're doing is egregious, says they would give them more time if they could. They've never seen an animal like that in the courtroom, all types of things. With this woman that took a man's life while he was minding his business in his own apartment is given a hug by the judge, and she mentioned Christian teachings. A lot of the Christian teachings that she's talking about are false because in her mind, Christ is white.
Mm-hmm.
In her mind, turn the other cheek means the 400 years that we suffered means nothing, and there shouldn't be a judgment for it. But let me get Revelations 13 and 10, because where were these Christian teachings when she was going through, the deliberation of this case? Let's hear it.
Revelations 13 and verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity.
So there's the slavery. So slavery does mean something. That's a judgment. If your ancestors, if your nation in the past had a hand in our slavery, you need to go into slavery. You need to go into servitude. That's the judgment. Where were those Christian teachings that we were supposed to receive? The reason why we can't judge a matter fairly upon our people or others, and when I say others, I mean, when we judge others, we're going to give them a lighter sentence. We're going to treat them better. But us, we're going to treat them unfairly until the point of getting kicked off of criminal court and being reduced to civil court. Where were the teachings of he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity if you want to be a Christian? Because the last time I checked, the scriptures say all scripture should be considered, right?
Exactly.
I'm paraphrasing. Let's read the rest of that verse.
Come on, Slocking. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword.
Where was that Christian teaching? She took that man's life and she received a hug from the judge. Didn't one of the bailiffs or one of the security like stroke the woman's hair, brush it for her? And then it even says that she gave the woman a Bible. She gave the woman a Bible. The reason why that this type of stuff happens with our people is because in our mind, seared in our mind, we believe that the oppressor is our God. So we can't even judge, like I said, each other righteously or them. One more verse on this subject, and then we're going to skip down to the next article. Let me get Zechariah 11:5. If I could, Baba Kashab. So we need to remember, whenever we're judging our people, we need to remember that the Lord wants us to judge our people righteously. We read that earlier. And while Kaash gets that verse, let me just read Leviticus 19:15 one more time. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Ain't that what that judge did with Meek Mill? Unrighteously judged them to the point of other people within her field having to review her cases. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. These are the type of scriptures that should be seared into our consciousness, especially if we're going to have a position of power to take somebody's freedom or give it to them. But that's not what happens in this country, because this is ran by the wicked. That's the reason why things are the way they are. If I could get that Zechariah 11:5, Baba Kashah.
Zechariah, chapter 11, verse 5. Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty.
In a lot of situations, our possessors slayed us and they hold themselves not guilty because they are judges,
right? And
they don't judge righteously. Any more on that?
Khan. And they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not.
They believe that they're doing something right and that the Lord is blessing. But there's going to come a day where they'll wish they weren't even born. And I pray I'm alive for that day. I'm going to read something else about judges. There were some judges that were actually taking money to put kids in jail. Y'all heard about that before, right? It says former Luzerne County Court judges Michael Conahan, which in the pictures on the left, and Mark Cavarella leave the United States District Court in Scranton, PA in 2009. The two Pennsylvania judges who orchestrated a scheme to send children to for-profit jails to exchange for kickbacks were ordered to pay more than $200 million to hundreds of children who fell victim to their crimes. That's not enough money. If you like, they pretty much sold children into servitude and slavery. They pretty much took precious time away from children for things that were nothing. There was one instance where a child served time for jaywalking. There were instances where they didn't even allow the children to be seen by their parents or have a hearing. They were just sent off. In instances like this should be a death penalty offense. They betrayed the trust of the people, the government that they work for. But since we work and we have to deal with the wicked, they don't really serve too much of a sentence. One of them was off with within a few years and was able to do house arrest. They should have spent the rest of their natural life in jail. If I could, let me get Deuteronomy 16, verse 18. And the moral or the entirety of this is just to remember what you're doing when you judge, because some brothers, even though they're not in a seat of power, something might happen where they have power over another brother and they don't do what they're supposed to do. There can be instances where we overreact to a situation. And the Most High don't want us the Most High doesn't want us doing that with our brothers and our sisters.
Right.
We shouldn't act like the heathen towards each other. We get enough of that from them. There's instances where somebody might do something to you, and then you want to go ahead and give them the full power of what you can do to them. Hold back a little bit, because the Most High wants us to do it a completely different way. And if we being attacked from within and on the outside, how are we going to survive it in a manner to go ahead and rebuild us to where we're not doing those types of things to each other in the first place? All right, Deuteronomy 16 and verse 18.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 18. Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates.
So judges and officers shall thy make thee in all thy gates. We should all be judges within our gates. There are leaders within the Black community, but they just haven't been discovered yet because they're not in the ISUPK. You don't want to be a leader in a criminal enterprise. You don't want to be somebody who ends up just leaving the hood and then you can't do anything to benefit your people. There should be leaders and judges within all of thy gates. Marcy Projects. There should be a leader and a judge within there. Watts, Compton, wherever else there's a hood, a barrio, there should be judges within those gates so we can get ourselves together. If there were judges in those gates, there wouldn't be drugs allowed to flow through our neighborhoods. We have other people policing us and judging us. We don't have control over what happens with us. Continue.
Which the Lord thy God giveth thee throughout thy tribes, and they shall judge the people with just judgment.
We should judge the people with just judgment, not like Judge Brinkley. That's not the type of judgment we should receive. Not like judges that receive, kickbacks and bribes, because that's what they did. For the love of money is the root of all evil, is what the scriptures say. And that's exactly what these two devils did. They loved money so much, they were willing to pretty much take the lives of children. Continue.
Verse 19. Thou shalt not wreak judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise.
These men ain't even wise enough, but yet they taking bribes. And those, I just wanted to break that down. Those prison for profits. You had something you wanted to bring out? Oh, that's Deuteronomy 16 in verses 18, and we reading up to 19. Those profit prisons are the reasons why Blacks are hoarded into those situations, because somebody is benefiting off of our slavery. That's the reason why. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are completely misrepresented in the justice system. Not only do they lose, their freedom physically, but they pretty much lose all their rights. And then you have these two devils that did that to children. Continue.
Con. And pervert the words of the righteous.
We could drop that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move to another situation which shows that a lot of these people are just unfit to be judges. You could put pretty much anybody in the ISUPK in a seat of judgment when it comes to certain things, or when it comes to all things, and you're going to get a more fair judgment than what you receive, what we have going on. This is an article, and let me go ahead and let me see if I can get right back to the article so I can actually cite it. Give me 1 second, because I actually want to cite the article before I even read the title, because it sounds like something out of fiction. All right, let me see. All right, so I don't see the source right now, but let me see if I can get it real quick. Salakia, bear with me. All right, so it's called the Hungry Judge Effect. And I believe the article is from The Guardian. Okay, I found it. So it's from The Guardian. I just wanted to go ahead and get the source. And it says, judges are more lenient after taking a break, a study fine. And this is two different, they still the devil, but this is covering British judges. This is covering Israeli judges. And it says the research which examined judicial rulings by Israeli judges who presided over parole hearings in criminal cases found that judges gave more lenient decisions at the start of the day and immediately after a scheduled break in a court proceeding such as lunch. Is that not, somebody can literally receive a harsher sentence because some idiot in a robe and a wig in Britain is hungry? That's the type of people that we have over top of us. It says Jonathan Lavalve, associate professor of business at Columbia University, who co-authored the paper, said you are anywhere between 2 and 6 times as likely to be released if you're one of the first 3 prisoners considered versus the last 3 prisoners considered. These devils got food aggression like a pit bull. Like the type of idiocy to have somebody in a situation that is ruling off of their stomach and how they feel at a certain time just goes to show you that we're run by the wicked. It says the authors of the peer-reviewed paper looked at more than 1,000 rulings made in 2009 by 8 judges. So they're spreading out the numbers here to actually get a more accurate view of what's happening. They found that the likelihood of a favorable ruling peaked at the beginning of the day, steadily declining over time from a probability of about 65% to nearly 0, before spiking up to about 65% after a break or a meal or snack. These men are led by their lusts. They're led by their stomach and their penises and their pockets. And we have these people over us to where you could walk in a courtroom and you got to worry about the judge being hungry. Salakia, go ahead.
And it's heavy what you're bringing out because, you know what I mean? Our oppressors rule over us, and not just in like the court systems, but in everything we do.
Right.
So there can be a pissed off oppressor in like your day-to-day job, your schoolwork. I mean, wherever you go to school at, you know what I mean? So they can probably fail you because they're in a bad mood or because they're hungry if they don't get no breaks. Like there's no ending to that. You know what I mean?
Damn right. Damn right. Good point. It continues and says, Lavalve said the paper had implications for British judgments. So that was Israeli judgments. These are British judgments. He said, what we're finding here is a basic psychological effect, and there's nothing different between the psychological effect on a British judge and an Israeli one. You should, if you're judging a matter, you should know yourself well enough to say, you know what, let me step away. We're gonna go to a break. Let me get something to eat before I sentence this man to life in prison because I didn't eat a bagel this morning. Like, come on. All right. Let me get another study as far as judges are concerned, because we have everything we need in the scriptures as far as righteousness, how to judge, but we can see constant things that show us that Blacks, Hispanic, and Native Americans are in a bad way when we go in that court system. You don't want to even deal with it. Like, you don't even want to be in a situation to where you have to go before a judge that's going to decide your fate. And the harshness is going to be decided whether you're Black, whether he's eating or not, whether he's being paid off by somebody, whether he wants to, make a point because he's secretly a KKK member. It says studies find racial disparities in whether U.S. judges impose prison. Blacks and Hispanic defendants in federal court are less likely than white ones to be sentenced to probation rather than prison. So in cases where a Black or Hispanic man can be sentenced to probation, they're being sentenced to prison. Right. When on the other hand, our white counterparts, they're getting the offenses pretty much, with a slap on the wrist, and they're given probation. And I don't know if y'all ever seen it, but there's a lot of instances where there's a white guy, or an oppressor, and he's out of jail, and you see his jacket as far as many sentences. And how did he get to this point? How is there so many criminal acts and felonies and this, that, and the fourth, and he's out of prison and he's able to commit that one last thing that breaks the straw that breaks the camel's back? It says let me see, where was I? A difference that largely accounts for the racial disparities in punishments judges impose, according to a new study. So when somebody says that the justice, like when a coolie tries to act like this is the land of promise and this is our rest and that everything is fine, if you're a black man, you're going to jail when you get in front of that judge because you're black and he's hungry. That's what's happening. So I took the chief of your Salakia. I started reading into the scripture. Let me get Deuteronomy 1:15 so we can see how these judges and men that decide fates, how it should happen.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1 and verse 15. So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men, known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribes.
So what is happening is the officers and the captains among the tribes, they are the judge, and they're being set over top of the people so they can make sure matters go the way they're supposed to go. So if something does happen, it's judged righteously. So it says the wise men and the known, the men of good reputation. Continue. You need something? That's script. Khan, I got you. Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 15. Underbar. All right.
Khan, verse 16. And I charged your judges at that time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother.
What does that mean? That means don't go in there hungry and end up doing something stupid.
Right.
Don't see a brother from another tribe and judge him differently because you're not from that tribe. Exactly. We suffer hell in this place, but the Lord saw fit to give us direction on how we should operate when it comes to judging. That's in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Continue.
Khan. And the stranger that is with him, you shall not respect persons in judgment, but you shall hear the small as well as the great. You should not be afraid of the face of man.
So don't be content or don't be comfortable with seeing somebody of great renown and think, you know what, I can't judge them the way that they should be judged because they're famous. I can't carry out judgment because this person is rich. Do you notice how we're being pretty much just disrespected throughout all media? Right. Just by so one man's mistake one black man's mistake means all of us are, sexual predators, right? Because the way that's being judged is completely different than what I see with a lot of other men. Like there's men all over the place within the music industry, within TV and movies, who have done far more heinous things. But Puff Daddy is the face of trafficking and sexual assault. Right. Whatever Puff Daddy did, P. Diddy did, he needs to serve time for it. But do you see the way the others are being judged when they do stuff? Do you see how their face is not being pressed in the news?
Right.
That's why we should separate ourselves from these people spiritually.
Exactly.
And in the manner of judgments. Because we talked about the Israelis, but I don't know if you noticed in certain parts of New York, they have their own police department. They go before different judges. They have a completely different system. They have power. That's not what we have in this place. We should be in a situation where we could judge each other righteously. And the Lord can give us that power back. Right. But we have to follow the laws, the statutes, and commandments to get there. Right. We can't listen to some Christian pastor talking about we can eat pork rinds. We can't listen to some imam or some person trying to get us to change our name to Muhammad and think that the Lord is going to be with us. We're going to continue to be under unrighteous rule.
Exactly.
Salaki, you have something to say?
Salaki.
Oh, no sweat. If you could continue, we're going to verse 17.
Khan. The end of verse 17. And the cause for the judgment is God's, and the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it.
If it's too hard of a matter, to deal with amongst ourselves, we were supposed to be able to take it to men that could deal with it. That's what we actually have here in the ISUPK. When there's a judgment that needs to be had, if there's a counsel that needs to be given, we can go before the men that are above us and receive that appropriate counsel. If I could, let me get Leviticus 19 and 15.
You said Leviticus 19 and 15?
Leviticus 19 and 15. And matter of fact,
This is
I can go ahead and read it because it looks like the young man got trying to ask you something. I can go ahead and read it.
I'm not gonna quick.
All right, no sweat.
This is Leviticus 19 and 15. You shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty.
So that's what we read in Salakia. Continue.
But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor.
We have to remember that they're supposed to be like we believe that the way these judgments are carried out is something normal. We believe that the justice system is, the way it is because that's the way it has to be. We believe that the justice system is something that's actually good when it's not. There's no reason for a man to sit in jail until his hearing for something that he didn't do. That doesn't even make any sense. Like that doesn't even make sense at all. I believe I had another stat on wrongfully convicted brothers and sisters, and this is Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. The statistics say that Black people are 7.5 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of murder than whites. Risk even greater if the victim is white. So you can be wrongfully convicted of a murder, because the victim is white, and it increases just because they're white. But we're to believe that justice is blind. Y'all ever see when you see what justice looks like? She has her eyes covered and she has the scales. Y'all ever see that? No. Yeah. If you could look that up, I think let's see what it's called. And this is a farce. It's a lie. If you could, I'm gonna see what it's actually called first. I'm gonna type something in before I say it, just in case it's something completely off. All right, it is. So I was right. It's called Lady Justice. If you could just show a picture of Lady Justice, I believe she's blind in the picture. She's holding like a scale and a sword, and we believe that this is something. This is ridiculous. Like you walk into a courtroom, and they have some metaphoric heroic type of Lady Justice, and we've talked about how a judge can sentence you wrong because you're hungry, or because there's no oversight, and they're pretty much operating with no scrutiny. They can just screw you over, and how Blacks are literally 7.5 times more likely to be convicted of a murder when they didn't commit it. I'm gonna continue to read, and yes, Lady Justice, if you can get that picture up, because they say justice is blind, but why, if justice is blind, then why are Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans the ones that are, more likely to go to prison for something they didn't do? It says Black people wrongfully convicted of murder also spent longer in prison before being exonerated. So even when they're innocent, they're spending more time in prison before being exonerated. And that's spending more time in prison than their white counterparts. Of the 75 innocent death row, let me see. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. It says of the 75 innocent death row defendants who spent 30 years or longer in prison before being exonerated, 67% were Black. So you had 75 people on death row, and they were in prison for 30 years or longer. Where's the justice in that? You don't even got to worry about that picture because I'm just like,
I got it right here though.
All right, no sweat. You can go ahead. Right. So yeah, the eyes are covered. She got the scales. There is no justice. That's some garbage that the oppressor has to kind of make believe as if we have a great justice system. Just like the Constitution, they acted like it was lawful, and it said that all men are created equal while we were in chains, while lands were being stolen. We don't have righteous judgment because the people who judge and preside over us are the children of murderers and thieves. They're the children of sexual deviants. So you're never going to get as a whole, as a people, you're never going to get a good judgment. Because if the judgment was as fair and just as they're saying, we would have been restored, right? What is 400 years of servitude, slavery, and like unaliving and essaying and the stripping of our heritage? What should be the judgment for that? Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. No sweat. No sweat. Round of applause. I'm inclined to agree. And in the scriptures, that's what's going to happen. In the scriptures, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen, because what did we read early in Revelations? What was that? 10 and 13? If I can get that one more time, because the young man is on point. The young man is on point. Yeah, if I can just get that one more time, because we about to wrap up soon.
Bring it up right now. 1 second. Lock it.
The water. And what I just got a couple questions, because I see that people have, whether it's judging a matter, whether it's just having like, when people use the description, when they're saying like, your judgment is off. Like, it's like people's judgment are off by simply not even being able to answer what a woman is.
Right.
When if you ask somebody what is a woman, it's an adult human female. That's what a woman is. You see, Trump just passed the bill that says there's only 2 genders. Why? People's judgment is so off. A decree throughout the land that had to be a decree throughout the land. The decree couldn't focus on stop beating the hell out of black people. Stop disrespecting the children of the Lord. The decree couldn't have been stop overrepresenting Blacks, Hispanic, and Native Americans on the TV for crimes, because we're overrepresented. They're showing us as these hyper animals, and they'll take a few instances and they'll just show those and make it like, where's the judgment in that? And the last thing I want to pose before reading Revelations, it's 13 and 10 or 10 and 13?
13 and 10.
13 and 10 is, how do we know what the difference is between right is wrong? Who decides what right and wrong is? Does anybody want to answer that question?
Who determines right and wrong?
What determines right or wrong?
Your morals.
Okay.
I said the Bible determines what's right.
Damn right. And that's where our judgments should come from. You had something you wanted to say?
I had a different answer.
Go ahead. Let's see if you want. Let's hear it. That's the same answer as Kosh. That's good. Round of applause. Good job, man. All right. So let's get Revelations 10 and 13. 13 and 10. Lock you. No sweat.
This is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 10.
This is the judgment, like the young man said earlier.
He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity.
Not he that leadeth into captivity should apologize.
Exactly.
He that leadeth into captivity should make diversity and inclusion trainings. He that leadeth into captivity should what?
Go into captivity.
He that leadeth into captivity should go into captivity. If you believe that everything that was done to Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans is something as light as what's been received by the oppressor, that's not even a slap on the wrist. What have they received? They received silver. They received gold. They received the kingdom. You believe that the judgment was for them to be prosperous after putting us in slavery? That's what you believe? Let's hear that again one more time from the top.
He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity.
If your forefathers had a hand in our slavery, then you should go into slavery. That's the judgment, because the people that have done it are already gone, right?
Right.
That's why in the scriptures it says, prepare slaughter for their children for the iniquity of their fathers.
Right.
Hell, my ancestors were in slavery, right? But the ones that were actually in slavery aren't the ones that actually had broken the covenant in Israel, but yet and still the judgment was for us to go into slavery.
Right.
Continue.
Khan. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword.
That should be the judgment. When Christopher Columbus came and did what he did and unalived the Native Americans, his ancestors should suffer the same fate. Or Salakia, his children. You know, the progenitor had, or the oppressor has done all of these things from the time of, you know, Greece, Rome, even until now. And we still believe, like Cooley, that there should be no judgment. Well, the Lord says different. And we should remember the scripture. When that judge talked about, you know, the Christian teachings, those are the teachings that we should teach. Revelations 13:10, Ecclesiastes 12:10. We should never trust our enemies. Those are the teachings, and we'll know how to judge around each other, and we'll know how to judge when a matter happens with the oppressor. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the class over to Priest and Officer Kaash.
This is the Isupk security announcements. Rules for new brother and sister. When a new brother and sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They're here to be saluted only. They're here to learn and set themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, they're to seek counsel from the heads. Tithe, which is a commandment, Numbers 18:21. Malachi 3:8-10, Ma'asher, which means a tenth in Hebrew, 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. Priest fund is a free will offering for the priest, not mandatory. Whatever amount you would like to give. Upcoming holy holidays is the Feast of Purim. That starts Friday, I think it's March 13th. And then after that, it's a Passover, April 12th. If any brother wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing black boots, shirt, pants, headband, and scarf with that. Which means stand. Men of Israel will do a courtesy salute. Bajim Shabbat, Amaitu, Barak,
Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Barakatah.
Yakmatah, hands down, sorry. Turn and face the sisters. Sisters are Majim, which means to stand. And we'll give the sisters a courtesy salute. Men of Israel, Bajim Shabbat, Amaitu, Barak, Yahweh Shamar, Hashem Yahshua. Pass this next.